What's up, guys? I have this 2009 370Z Nismo, very clean, from Rocket Garage, which is right here up the street from our shop. So it's the same street, just heading west. It's like literally 10 seconds. They do alignments and other things, so I'll go ahead and put their at right here somewhere. So this 370Z is completely stock aside from a Tomei. So that's all it has, just a Tomei catback. And we're gonna do a baseline and see what else. So first pull, which is the red one, it made 276 wheel horsepower and 245 wheel torque. Second pull, I waited about 2-3 minutes, and of course the power dropped. It's making 270 wheel horsepower and 240 torque, so we dropped 6 wheel horsepower roughly, or you can say exactly 5.69. that's the peak. And peak torque, it dropped 5.2 pounds of torque to the wheels. So there's no tune in here, there's no adjustments on the second pull. This is all completely stock. That's why sometimes you don't really need multiple pulls for a baseline, you know, unless you were trying to set something up on the dyno. There's a lot of details on that don't need to be explained unless you're a dyno operator. But yeah, we're gonna see what it does. Again, it's completely stock, just has a Tomei catback. So that orange line right there is with my first adjustments. Man, I can smell those cats. I think the cats are on the way out. See all those gangs, the top end just keeps going all the way to red line. Alright guys, so with the car completely stock other than the Tomei, made 276 wheel horsepower, which is, sorry the window is up, let me lower that for you. There's a lot of noise going on outside, which I think he's putting some tires on, some wheels. So that's the red one. The gray one is the tune, which is 284 wheel. So again, this is a Nismo, and once again, it's completely stock other than the Tomei. So the Nismos make 350 horsepower to the crank, or to the flywheel, to the engine. This one has about 81,000 miles, so it's good condition. So let's talk a little bit about percentages on dyno difference, drivetrain loss. So this car from the factory, brand new in perfect condition, no modifications, 350 to the crank. Normally, you know, it's about 15 to 18% drivetrain loss. So by the time it gets to the wheels, you know, the power is a lot less than the engine is making. So, and some say up to 20%. So it's never an exact percentage, but it's a very good estimate. So we can say 15 to 18% or 15 to 20% on a rear wheel drive car. So 350 horsepower to the engine minus 15%, we're just going to use 15%, is 297 wheel horsepower. So in perfect condition, this Nismo 370Z makes 297 to the wheels roughly. And there's also variables depending on what dyno you use, the condition of the motor, how the spark plugs are, you know, condition of spark plugs, the air filters, condition of the catalytic converters. But assuming you use the traditional dyno that you normally see online, perfect condition, the car will make 295 to 297 horsepower to the wheels. So this one made 276 to the wheels instead of the roughly 295, 297. So does that mean something's wrong? Well, not really in this case, because we know that our dyno here reads on the lower side. So that is also another percentage. So since it reads lower, we're gonna take off a little bit more percentage. So I've worked on multiple dynos in many years. So I already know what the cars were doing when they were brand new, like the DEs, the HRs, the VHRs, you know, the R35s. I know what they were putting down on traditional dynos because that's what I was using. I've used multiple, rented before, you know, I finally got to having my own dyno. So in fact, it is true that the 370Z Nismo puts down anywhere from 292 to about 297, 98 wheel horsepower stock, because that's what the cars I was getting, the 370 Nismos, I was getting those stock. I was tuning them stock when I was using other dynos a long time ago. All right, so 350 crank minus 15% is 297 wheel. This dyno reads about roughly 5% less than most other dynos. So usually we use about 5%. So again, 350 crank minus 15% is 297 wheel horsepower on most dynos. So now 297 minus the 5% difference on the dyno pack. So 297 minus 5% is about 282 wheel horsepower. And that is about correct, because to the point where I started using a hub dyno, a dyno pack before this one, that's what the cars were doing in excellent condition. Literally, I've had customers come to me with 3,000 miles, 2,000, 5,000, basically brand new 370Zs, whether Nismo or base models. And this is what the Nismos were putting down, about 280 to 285 on a dyno pack over here. And of course, the percentage varies, but you know, there's a lot of variables, just like in life. So you have condition of the motor, spark plugs, gas quality, gas octane, age of the gas, condition of the air filters. So there's always going to be some very slight variables, just like the weather. So again, quick recap: 370Z Nismo, 350 crank, perfect condition. They make about 297 wheel horsepower on most dynos, which is a 15% drivetrain loss. This one reads about 5% less, so 297 minus 5% is about 282 wheel horsepower. That's completely stock. And then this one here, I tuned it. Again, this one made 276 with no tune, and 284 after the tune, so we gained 7.92, roughly 8 wheel peak. We obviously have more than 8 in other spots. I'll lower the window in a little bit. So with the tune of 284 on this dyno, we're gonna go ahead and add back the 5% to assume it's on another dyno. So 284 plus 5% is 298. So that's on this one here, on this specific car. So in perfect condition, this car and other dynos actually makes about 304 wheel horsepower, which is what the Nismos were making stock, or maybe stock with the intake when I would tune them another dynos. So the reason why now there's a difference from, like I said, 284 tuned plus 5% is 298. I did mention 304 in perfect condition because this car, the baseline was 276. It should have made about 282, but of course the car is not new, but it's still in really good condition. So if it was in perfect condition with no tune, the baseline should be roughly 282. We're still in the area. And after the tune is 284, but with the 5% is 298. And then if it was in perfect condition, it would make 304. So the baseline no tune 276 should have made 282. We're about 6 wheel horsepower roughly difference. So we're just adding those 6 horsepower to the tune number plus 5%. So hopefully you're keeping up with that. But here's a quick picture of this right here. You can pause it. Hopefully you can understand it. Now we can talk about the base model 370Zs. So, well, hello. Bring this over here. So a base model 370Z would be just anything that's not a Nismo. So those make 330 to the crank as opposed to 350. So again, using the traditional just ballpark 15% deduction, those make about 280 wheel horsepower stock, and that is very, very correct. That's actually usually what I was getting when I would put these cars on the dyno when they just came out, even the new ones. So the Nismo's 297 and all the other models are putting about 280 wheel horsepower completely stock. And this is on your traditional dynos like Dyno Jet. Mustang dynos are actually all over the place. Like, there's people who just swear by they read too high. There's people that swear by they read too low. They're actually all over the place. They're pretty inconsistent. The more consistent ones, I believe, is Dyno Jet, Dynapack, and Mainline, and I don't know if there's a Pro Hub or something like that. I think that's the name. They're actually very consistent between themselves, between the dynos themselves. So now let's say the base model 370Z, let's assume it was on this dyno here. So 280 is what it normally makes minus 5%. That means on this dyno it'd make about 266, maybe 270 to the wheels, completely stock base model 370Z. Now let's assume that I just tuned a base model 370Z based off of the gains of this one, which is 7.92, or we could say 8 wheel horsepower peak. So from 266, let's just say on this dyno that I tuned it completely stock and it made 274 on this dyno, that would be roughly 287 to 290 on another dyno. And I believe I put Dynapack again here, but this is should say Dyno Jet. So again, this is both of these are on complete stock cars, and from experience. And then if you were to Google drivetrain loss on rear wheel drive car, it'll tell you 15 to 20%, and that's actually about right. Not everything on Google is correct. The AI is just grabbing information from the web. I believe it's called web crawling or something like that. So the AI, it's just gathering what's already out there. It doesn't know if it's right or wrong. It's just assuming. But that information about the 15 to 20% drivetrain loss on rear wheel drive has been around for a long, long time, and it's about pretty correct, actually. There's a lot of variables. You have to remember there's variables in life, there's variables in cars, so it's not always going to be exact. You know, you could have two cars with, let's just say, 500 miles and same year, same model, everything's exactly the same, put them on the dyno. You could have the same results or slightly different results. So if you ever got in your car tuned here or just pulls, if you rent to the dyno, you can add roughly 5%. It'll get you a really, really great idea on what it would make on another dyno if you're trying to get those higher numbers. But then you could say this one reads lower. So the dyno is a tool for before and after, or if you're unable to get it before, it's a tool to get the car dialed in. If you want higher numbers, then you can go find the dyno that reads really high. But for accuracy wise, you're looking at a Dynapack or a Dyno Jet, and there's other differences. For example, this Dynapack compared to another one near the beach here in Southern Cali, which I know there's about two. Once you get over there, they read higher than here. So this 5% additional that we're taking off from the 15 is just for us here. So if I were to move my dyno closer to the beach, I most likely won't have this additional 5% loss. It could be 1 or it could be nothing. Because up here we also technically have less oxygen up here in a way. So hopefully this was a little educational for you guys. This could apply to other things, but all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive, they have slightly different percentages. And then, you know, you can go on about a debate, but if you don't own a dyno or you haven't rented one at least 100 times, then you really have no say on how a dyno works. It doesn't matter what type of research you do, because you don't have the experience for it. I mean, I use it every single day for a really, really long time. Because some people say because the wheels have to come off that it's not an accurate reading. Well, at the end of the day, it's a software calculation. It could assume that the wheels are on there. Like I said, there's a whole debate about dynos for absolutely no reason. And there's also this here, the corrections. I don't know why some shops are using really, really old corrections. Some of them read really, really high. Maybe it's to make themselves look better, because most people aren't going to see that says SAE. This is the latest type of reading correction, but it's not like new as of this year. It's been there for a long time, but it does have other options in there. I don't have the keyboard with me. It's over there. I don't want to get up. But we can change them on there, and it'll show you. So it's not like you can hide it from a customer. It'll show on there. It'll show out if you print it out or whatever. It should be on this one, but perhaps they didn't want to change it to the newest type of correction because maybe it might confuse their customers. So there could be a lot of reasons. I did have a tuner that rented my dyno, I believe about 4 times, and he would change that. And I asked him, oh, why are you changing that? And he said that that's what he's used to. So with the SAE numbers, it's just not what he's used to. He would think maybe something's wrong with the car. So that's more reasonable if he's used to a different type of correction. But this is what it should be at, because this is the latest as of, I don't know, I think like early 2000s. So yeah, it's maybe 20 years. I don't really remember. But there's really no reason to be changing the corrections right there, unless it's something like that tuner that rented this dyno multiple times, and the numbers he can give his customers that they're expected to receive are correct.